Welcome, everybody. Hi. I am so honored to have everybody here. I'm really excited. My heart is pounding pretty fast. And it looks like everyone's been doing a really great job already of muting themselves, but just if you don't know, just mute yourself while I'm doing the presentation, and then afterward, when you want to speak, you can unmute yourself and we can talk and ask questions and have comments and that sort of thing. So I want to start by lighting a candle. This is grounding for me. We'll talk about, this actually relates to the presentation. Have my little candle here. And I just want to say welcome. I'm really excited to share this presentation with everybody. It's a topic that's really close to my heart. And I just want to say that my intention for today is to share with you. That's share this topic that I love. And I am not an expert on this topic. It's just something that I've dove into because I love it and it feels important to me. So I'm here to share with all of you wonderful humans. And I'd love to take a bow, which is something you can participate in or not. There's no pressure. This is something that we do at Naropa to mark the beginning and endings of gatherings that we have. And this is a bow to yourself and to the space that we're creating together for this time and to each other. So feel free, whether it's internal or external, just taking a nice breath and feeling your body wherever it's resting. Taking a bow together, if that feels right. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. And if everyone could mute themselves, that would be wonderful, please. So let's see, play. All right, oh, 1 second. Sorry, I'm just figuring out how to move something. Okay. All right. Oh, yay, Patrick's here. Patrick is actually here from, he's at the hospital and taking a break for this. Okay, now we're gonna press play. Okay, so this is our topic for the day, clinical intuition, the artistry and neuroscience behind psychotherapy. And my hypothesis for today that I want to share is that psychotherapy is an art, and clinical intuition, or what I'll be referring to as CI sometimes, is a blend of multiple coexisting skills in the therapist's toolbox. Although often unmentioned, it is a key component to effecting deep change in clients. And through bringing conscious awareness to what CI is, we can benefit both our clients and the field of psychology. So this is a quote by Terry Marks Tarlow that I want to begin with. Terry Marks Tarlow is really a leader in the field of intuition and neurobiology. And so she's been driving this part of the field forward with both research and writing and teachings and workshops. And she's a leader in this part of the field, and I will be mentioning her many times. So whether in the form of flashes, hunches, gut feelings, body experiences, or behavioral impulses, every psychotherapist relies on clinical intuition to fill the gap between theory and practice. So what we're going to be covering for today is a definition. Why this topic? Why do we care? The neurobiology behind it and what we've been learning from the neurobiology. and types of clinical intuition, ways to strengthen your own intuition, clinical or otherwise, and ethical considerations and a little recap. So here's a definition for right now, and it is long, but we'll break it down. So it's a spontaneous, innate, system-wide process which allows clinicians to access unconscious, unspoken information as a result of meta-communication experienced through a myriad of forms, which the clinician may or may not use in support of the client's goals. So that's a mouthful, but let's break it down. So we have, first part is a spontaneous, innate, system-wide process. And spontaneous arrives from bottom-up processes, which we'll talk about what that means, and they're largely nonverbal due to when that part of our brain starts developing in utero, and have quick neural circuitry. So, and we'll go more into that later. Innate, this is something that people are born with. It's something that Terry Marks Tarlow says that we can strengthen it like we water a garden. And not everybody is consciously connected to it. So part of that is because we don't have a lot of vocabulary for it. And that's what I aim to do today, is bring more vocabulary to what is clinical intuition. And system-wide. So system-wide process, in 2004, there was an article published in the Journal of Alternative Complementary Medicine that was entitled Electrophysiological Evidence of Intuition. And they found that the heart and the brain are both involved in receiving, processing, and decoding intuitive information. And they called it a system-wide process. It's used using the body, the heart, and the brain, and the mind. So some info even showed that the heart was receiving a lot of information prior to the brain, and that makes sense when we talk about bottom-up processes, which I'll go into more about what that means. And these are bundled faculties. So we have a lot of different faculties that all come together to make up what we call clinical intuition. And meta-communication, which is, well, actually I want to speak about real quick, allows clinicians to access unconscious, unspoken information. And when I'm talking about conscious versus unconscious in this presentation today, just to be simple, I'm talking about what we are aware of and what we're not aware of. So that's just to simplify it. And a result of meta-communication. So meta-communication is also called paranormal communication, and this includes gesture, posture, rate of speech, tone of voice, micro-expressions, and observations of this information over time, even though it can be largely unconscious for the clinician, can offer sudden insights to the clinician. And a myriad of forms. So we have a variety of different forms, and one kind of way of categorizing it is sudden recognition, immediate knowledge, emergent awareness, nonverbal insights, and holistic integrative sensibilities. And I'll go into what each of those mean. And each clinician has their own really unique way of accessing their intuition and the way it comes to them. And I think of this like a fingerprint. Every clinician and every person really accesses their intuition in a unique way. So, actually, I want to go back and say we may or may not use it. This, the reason we may or may not use our insights in the moment is because, above all, we're abiding by do no harm as therapists, and we are, this requires discernment and practice, and it's not about being right, it's actually about supporting the client in their goals. So a quick look into the past. We have these three dudes here, and each of them actually wrote and talked about clinical intuition. And without the neuroscience that we have now to understand what clinical intuition is, it wasn't really accepted into mainstream psychology. And it's still being accepted as we learn more about what it actually is. So Peter Lomas has this great quote, which I appreciate. It says, direct or immediate insight, intuition, should not be regarded as a magical gift that has nothing to do with thought or experience of life, and that it is intrinsically inexplicable. It is more likely that at the moment of gaining insight, we are quite unaware of the steps that led to our knowledge. So in the West, Often, if it can't be proven by science, it's been deemed inferior. And intuition has been definitely in that category and thought of as woo-woo or not suitable for science or therapy. And I believe that by learning more about this and validating it, this is actually validating alternative ways of knowing, and we're welcoming a wider array of identities into the field. So we're opening to implicit intuitive ways of knowing, and that's going to include an array of identities in both client and in therapist as we begin having more of a conversation about this. And Terry Marks Tarlow says that using clinical intuition is not just helpful, but it's actually necessary for fostering deep change within clients. And I believe that this is because clinical intuition fosters attunement, which is just a short explanation of what attunement is this presence or feeling of being connected to one another. So in the clinical setting, that would be the clinician or the client feeling that the clinician is there listening to them, feeling them, that they're feeling understood. And we've seen that this actually causes neuroplasticity in the brain, which means that there's ability to change and create new pathways in the brain for changing habits and beliefs and systems of thought. So modeling self-acceptance for clients, I think this is something that feels really important to me. This is also, you can think of modeling or observational learning, and this is learning through seeing others doing something. And this happens with children, learning language from their caregivers, learning everything from their caregivers, from how to wave. We can see this without having to teach them necessarily how to do these things. They pick them up through watching. And so modeling this trusting ourselves, because we need to build trust in ourselves to use clinical intuition, is actually modeling that for the client. So we're modeling trusting ourselves and what it looks like and feels like to be connected to our experience and to be present, as well as having humility when we offer something for the client and it doesn't land for them. And then therapists are already using these tools. This is something that's already widespread, and we just don't have a lot of vocabulary, like I said, for this topic. So vocabulary helps us to talk about it, understand it, and gives us awareness of what the tools we're using and supports us in honing them, as well as to teach other clinicians, especially newer clinicians, what this is and how to find it and use their own. All right. So implicit processes are the foundation of clinical intuition. This is an important piece. I'm going to take a sip of water. All right, so bottom-up processes. These are, when I say bottom-up, this is as opposed to top-down, and bottom-up processes are sensory and emotional data that come from our physical experience. And these begin in the implicit processes begin to form in the third trimester in utero, which actually is obviously pre-verbal. So from then on, oftentimes clinical intuition is found to be nonverbal. And below conscious awareness, this is, we're not necessarily cognitively thinking about what's happening. This is something that's arriving from below, that bottom-up processing. And then these are automatic processes. This, you can also think of this as when you touch a hot stove, you pull your hand away immediately. You don't have to think about it. This is the same action in the brain, or the same system of operation. It's an immediate response, and this is actually very fast acting neural circuitry as opposed to top-down processing, which we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Top-down processing is actually slower. So this top-down is the opposite of bottom-up, which is having a thought and not leading the process, as opposed to having a feeling and then having it rise up and having a thought come from a feeling. This is more of top-down is cognition driving perception. So let's see. In this implicit processes is where flow state can happen. So this allows therapists to respond fluidly, authentically, and spontaneously. And clinical intuition involves the perception of relational patterns in both self and other. So this is where we have pattern recognition, which can support the client in self-awareness, and requires a shuttling of attention. And we're going to talk about shuttling of attention in a moment, but this is another quote. Through intuitive processing with the implicit realm, we engage in a non-stop dynamic dance of dual awareness, continually making tiny shifts and micro adjustments in attention and response on the basis of embodied awareness. And I think this is part of why I consider clinical intuition an art. So the shuttling of awareness here is between various different locations. So we're shuttling our awareness from self to other. We're putting awareness on the relationship between the client and the therapist, also inner and outer. So we have sensory data and thoughts within ourselves. We have what's going on in the room and greater systems that we're actually living in. So greater systems of oppression, potentially we're going from the micro to the macro and back in. And so this shuttling of awareness is really something that takes practice, and holding multiple pieces at one time takes practice. So we're also shuttling between the past and the present. This might be the client's greater story, what they've shared with us and how it might relate to right now. Might be their behaviors of now and in the past when they've been with you. Body communication of past and present, patterns of sensory data that you might experience with this client. Noticing every time they talk about this story with their mother, I feel this tightening in my stomach, and might that be of support in this moment? And this requires embodied self-awareness and close attention to somatic markers. So let's talk about what kind of intuition you might draw upon. And this, even if you're not a clinician, you might think about ways that you access your own intuition. So sudden recognition would be sudden recognition of a pattern or a thought, behavior or underlying belief that you might see that the client is having. Can be gained through countertransference experiences, and these are nonlinear insights which come from this kind of eagle eye perspective, and we'll talk more about that when we go into right and left brain processing. We have immediate knowing, which is also talked about as thoughts without thinking. So this might be, for me, this happens when a client is speaking and I feel really engaged in what they're speaking, and then maybe one word will arise and I haven't put in any effort to find this word, and it might be very poignant to the moment, and I can choose to use that to offer that word to them or not. And then emergent awareness, this can also be like the client sits down and suddenly you know something about how they're feeling, or something about what happened this past week, something they aren't actually saying, and it can be like a hunch or like a bell ringing inside, and this is often a gentle ringing bell. And if it's appropriate, you can check it out with your client, and we'll get more into ethics around when and when not to. And then emergent awareness is also flashes of knowing something, and inexplainable awareness of information which should be unknown. And then we have nonverbal insights, which is largely how intuitive information arises. I often have nonverbal insights in form of visual metaphors. And they're often nonverbal, like I said, because of developmentally implicit processes start to develop pre-verbally. And this could be visual metaphors, imagery, somatic sensations, feelings which offer an understanding of the client, even seeing patterns. Some clinicians say that they actually see things. They'll see a pattern, or they'll see words in their mind to offer to the client. Also, more rarely, but some people have hearing and hear things that aren't necessarily there in the room, or smell something or taste something that gives them information. And this also could be a feeling of being on the right track with a client. And so I want to share a little story. When I started recognizing that I was in session having a lot of these visual metaphors coming to me, I was kind of wondering, what is this and how do I use it? And I spoke to my supervisor, and we talked about potentially using these in the right moment. And so I started offering different visual metaphors to my clients. And what I found with 3 different clients was that visual metaphor supported them during the week in between our therapy sessions for them to actually integrate. So it might have been an image of a stone in a river with the water washing over it, or something else. It's usually, for me personally, often relates to something in nature. And I've had multiple clients come back the week after and say, you know, this thing you said really stuck with me and helped me to process throughout my week, which I felt was very valuable. And then we have holistic and integrative sensibilities. And this is the big picture. This is the ability to really hold the big picture and seeing everything as part of the whole. So everything the client is sharing is connected to something else, and being able to see those connections. And drawing novel connections happens here, which is really an integral part of, can be an integral part of supporting the client with deep change. So we're going to talk about right hemisphere and left hemisphere of the brain. But I'm just going to check something really quick to make sure that this is all working properly, because I can't see everybody. Okay, this is working okay. I'm going to go back to play. Okay, so right here we have the right brain, and the right and left brain are both involved in psychotherapy, but we know that the intuition is centered here in the right brain, so the intuitive processes. So the right side of the brain is really the eagle's eye or overview needed for this dual attention in psychotherapy and the shuttling of attention. And we can also, relaxed attention happens here. So we have the open focus, which is also like a diffused focus, focusing on multiple pieces at one time. And non-conscious operations, which are implicit, bottom-up responses, and body-based knowing. We have polysemantic, which means multiple focus processing style. And there are two studies, one in 1994 and one in 2004, that show the style of this style of multiple focus processing actually preserves the wholeness of the other and the complexity, and it facilitates what we call the I-thou relationship. And this is a term coined by Martin Buber by his book in 1923, I and Thou. And the I-thou relationship really honors the uniqueness of the individual and honors the humanness in the other, and it actually supports in the building of a therapeutic relationship, which we know as a main component of what fosters change in clients across all modalities and styles of therapy. It's actually what they found is the relationship that causes the change for clients. And then this is contrasted with the I-it relationship, which can be coherent and ordered, but it also lacks the human connection, and it's often feels like a being done to, it's characterized by objectification. So in the right hemisphere, we also have novel connections. Take a little drink. Novel connections are huge. Like I said, it's part of what fosters deep change in clients, offering new ways that parts of their story might be connected, or possible defense strategies that you've seen them use over time. And this is a part, pardon me, the right hemisphere is where we sense and feel our way forward, and agendas are dropped here. We're in a state of being over doing, and there's a true collaboration that happens with the client and the therapist here. Let's talk a little bit about the left brain. So the left brain, clinicians, again, need to use both. It's very important. The left brain is a powerful problem solver. It zooms in on one aspect and finds an answer. It's scanning for an answer, actually. And it reduces complexity to be able to find that answer. And it can be important when needed. It's great in a crisis. It's great for logistics, which are needed as well. And it attends to one piece of the puzzle. And there's explicit knowledge here in conscious awareness versus the unconscious embodied knowing that we were talking about. And power dynamics are centered in the left hemisphere of the brain as well. There's a study in 2008 by Coote and Kazin that found the primary motive of the left part of the brain is power. And they found that strictly left brain approaches in therapy can evoke a feeling of being done to, as opposed to this more collaborative effort that can happen when we use both hemispheres of the brain. So I just want to talk about what it looks like in session, and I want to acknowledge that natural clinical intuition takes time, and I believe years of practice. I talk to seasoned clinicians, and it seems like, 30 years of practice, clinical intuition is definitely online. They might not have called it that before, but it's something they're very connected to and really bridges the gap between the theory and the actual practice in the session with the client. So it looks like a relaxed body and mind, and we're having ability to rest in the silences with the client. And there's a sense of being maximally alert, but also tuned into the client, into the moment, and to ourselves. And this allows for a kind of a dance of following and then leading with the client. So we're, at least in the style of therapy that I do, it's client-led therapy. So they're leading, and then I'm seeing what emerges in my own intuition and offering a piece when it feels right. And then that really allows for that collaborative feeling. And there's a sense of being okay with the unknown. And I see clinical intuition as offerings, and they don't have to be taken by the client. And that requires a deep humility to say, this may or may not resonate for you, but I have it to offer if it feels like it might be relevant. And then the deep humility if they say that doesn't really resonate for me right now. And then let's talk about how to build and access clinical intuition, or any kind of intuition, really. So there's multiple texts that recommend building intuition through having rituals and practices. And the reason why is it actually supports in building relaxed attention and internal awareness, and getting to know your internal cues, which is really paramount in working with clinical intuition. So we have any kind of embodiment practice is supportive for building this, identifying your own intuitive strengths. And I can share some books if you want to do a little more research on that. Practicing single focus and diffuse attention, meditation, and any kind of mindfulness. The meditation can be movement meditation as well. Expressive arts, we know that creativity is strongly linked to clinical intuition and intuition in general. It accesses the right side of the brain and builds those faculties. And this could be expressive arts personally or with your own therapist, and a practicing of shuttling attention between inner and outer, self and other. Lighting a candle can be supportive. I often light a candle before a session and blow it out at the end just to mark that time. And any sort of visualizations or personal rituals for grounding, clearing, emptying out. I often, before a session, especially if it's a client that I've had reactions to, I'll often imagine myself and the parts of me that might be resistant to working with this client and sort of set them aside, letting them know that I'll come back to them. And that helps me be really present for the client and also helps me access my intuition. And setting intentions, and intentions are different than goals. Goals are a pointed focus. So a goal might be, I want to make sure I talk to this client about this one thing in the session. And an intention would be more like what I did in the beginning of this, of setting my intention to come from a place of sharing with all of you. And then practicing listening to your own inner cues in session and noticing what are they? What is speaking to me inside? And learning to tell the difference between reaction and response, which I'll talk about in a minute. So let's talk about ethical considerations. So first of all, trust in our client's truth and readiness is first and foremost. This is not about a party trick or being right. This is about using our own connectedness to the client to support them in their goals and their desire for changes. So like I said earlier, we have to distinguish solid, grounded intuition from reactive impulses. And so reactive impulses are a defense response, whereas intuition comes from a deeper place. And I find that you'll have to find your own way of determining what the difference is. But I notice that a reaction often feels more intense, and it can feel more like immediate and intense. And then my clinical intuition, or tuning into my intuition during a session, feels a lot more gentle. That voice feels grounded. My body feels relaxed. I can tell that it's coming from a place of love and compassion, as opposed to reaction might not be holding that compassion for the client, that really holding them with that I thou relationship that I talked about. And the mindfulness and embodiment practice, I've talked about this a few times, but the more acquainted we are with our own inner cues and landscape of sensations, thoughts, and emotions outside of the session, the more comfortable we can be inside of the session to work with that and see what arises and notice, does this feel like a reaction? Does this feel like a response? And know the difference. And taking one step at a time. This is a journey, not a destination. If you're curious about this, I encourage you to read more. There is so much literature. I can send it to you. And it's really, there's some workbooks even to help build your clinical intuition, and work with your supervisor. Talk to them about how you are feeling connected to your intuition, how you're wanting to use it. What are the ways that you can do it in a good way? And then I put this slide. This is a question for all of you who have a practice of clinical practice. And for me, these felt like really important pieces. So what would your clinical practice be without your access to your somatic sensations, a natural sense of which direction to go during a session, images and metaphors, pattern recognition, seeing new connections of things that you might not have seen before with your client, a sudden knowing, organic flow of relating between you and your client, the ability to be with the unknown, that is okay, and comfortable silences. And let's do a quick recap. We have clinical intuition is bottom-up processes. These are inborn faculties that can be cultivated, grown, honed. And we have clinical intuition is right brain focused, although we do use both the left and right side of the brain. And it requires a shuttling of attention and embodied awareness. And we have the potential for deep change within clients using these parts of ourselves. And important to seek supervision and exploration with peers, others in the field who are curious about this too, talking about your experiences. Terry Marks Tarlow talks about how clinical intuition is not the be-all end-all, but it is something to be respected and talked about and explored. And it's not, don't think that it's always right. It's not, it's a part of us and can be of service to the process for the client. So I think that is what I have here in my references. And that is all for right now. I'm going to stop the screen share. All right. Hi, everybody.
Great job, Gwen.
Thank you.
You nailed it.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, would anybody there? Oh my gosh, my family has time. It's pretty cute.
Amazing. Good job.
Thank you. So yeah, we have some time for any questions or comments.
Bless you. I use clinical intuition all the time, I'm sure, and especially when I'm like doing Gestalt work or doing psychodrama. And it just gave me a little bit more language for it, and also pieces like where mine, like more like sudden recognition and like this organic awareness. And a lot of times when people ask questions, well, why'd you do that and why'd you do this? I can usually come up with an answer afterwards of why I did it, you know, like in class or something. But at the time, I am not tuned into my cognitive process at all.
Right.
Afterwards that I can trace back and say, well, I'm thinking I did this because of this, this, and this. But right. I think it's totally more clinical intuition. So excellent job.
That's so cool.
Proud of you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so glad you're here. I feel like what you're talking about too is that piece of the seasoned clinician where you have a lot of theory and then it becomes embodied, and then you're using it in a way, and then you can explain it afterwards, but it's really coming from that bottom up.
Absolutely.
Process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Guinevere? Hey, thank you. I was just curious what studying this, like how this informed your session, like what changes did you notice in your sessions around your intuition as you were exploring this topic or as a result?
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I feel that it helped me integrate what was already happening and trust it more. And I was really, some of you know that I was doing something with Adam, who has just asked this question, and Pam, who's here, who have both been my coaches and teachers in the past. Hi, Pam. Of really learning how to tune into the clinical intuition, and I really had to figure out how to bring that into psychotherapy, which is different than process coaching. And I think it gave me a lot of permission to use what I already knew from and what I'd really already learned from process coaching and just integrate it in another way. So it was a really important part of in the session, just grounding and relaxing and going, okay, I know that there is information here and I don't need to effort so hard to find the answers, if that makes sense.
I'd love to add on, Gwen. Just an outstanding integration. You know, what you've described. I feel very moved, very touched, and, you know, just so proud of you. Yeah.
I'm so happy you're here, Pam. I got your email this morning that you were coming, and it feels really special to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to say well done and obviously send you a lot of love and congratulations. What I was thinking during your presentation is, well, first of all, what Karen was saying, you know, how you're giving language to all these things that we feel. And as you say, we have to give permission almost to these parts to emerge in session. But what I was thinking all along was, especially when you talk about the metaphors and your use of metaphors, I was thinking about you. And, you know, I know you're also a poet and you have been since a very young age. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's almost like she's integrating that poet part in the sessions. I don't know how that, I'd love to know how that resonates with you and what comes up when I say this, but that was very present for me.
Thank you. Yeah, that feels really true. I love you three. I'm so glad you're here. These three are in Italy right now. They live in Italy and they're tuning in. Hi. I feel really, that really resonates for me. I do feel like it allows me to access the poet, that poetic piece inside. And a lot of my poetry does have a lot of metaphor with nature, and it's just spot on. Thank you for saying that, Nico.
Well done, Gwen. I just want to echo a little bit of what Nico's saying, and just, yeah, like I hope everyone, myself included, walks away from this just trusting their intuition more, since it seems to be such a challenge and also such a gift. So just the balance is really, truly an art. And you've definitely been someone at Naropa who is, I know, leans heavily on your intuition in every single thing you do. So just thanks for inspiring everybody, and I hope to keep hacking away at it despite my my hesitations.
Thank you, Charlotte. I love you.
Hey, Gwenny. I just want to acknowledge like how brilliantly, like bringing language to something like this, like is so complex and nuanced. And I feel like it is when we have language for something, it then becomes easier. It feels a little bit more tangible, and it becomes more recognizable, and also something that we can then start to connect to more within ourselves. And so I just feel like you did such an incredibly brilliant job of bringing language to something that is so hard to bring language to. And I will, you know, I feel like I need to hear it again, and I will definitely be leaning on you for the language component around this. So thank you. And I know you poured your heart into this. And well done.
Thank you.
If you're not uploading it, which you might be, could you share it with everybody on this call?
The video?
Yeah, I would love to watch it again.
Yeah, I realized that I don't have it'll be mostly just the audio and the visual. My face isn't on there, which is fine. But yes, I will share it with whoever wants to have it. Yeah. I also just want to thank my parents who are here and for their endless encouragement for me to be creative, which I really believe has a huge impact on my ability to connect with my intuition. And that they're just have always encouraged me to create in whatever way that I can, and whatever way feels. And that's such a huge part of my life is creativity. And thank you, Daddy. Yeah. And I also want to acknowledge all my teachers who are here. It feels really sweet to have you here. Teachers from Naropa and teachers from before. You've all had everyone here has had a huge impact on my whole journey. So thank you all for being here.
Gwen, I feel like
You've had a big impact on us. I just wanted to say you've had a big impact on us, and that's why we're here.
Thank you, Ariel.
Hey, Gwen, I have a couple questions too.
Yeah.
You can find me.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, and you kind of just spoke to it, but I was curious about your own process with as you were diving into this and researching this, did you have these aha moments where you were like, oh, that's where I was working on it then at like that age, or this helped me at this age? And if it's something that you felt connected to all your life, that now that you have the language for, you understand?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, intuition is something that I have always felt very connected to. I felt like I've always had the ability to move from these implicit processes, like don't necessarily know the why, but I have a clarity on something. And yeah, it was really, it gave me a lot of validation and encouragement to continue developing these parts of myself and to continue talking about them. This is a newer area a newer recognized area in the field of psychology. And it feels important for me to talk about it with people, because I want everyone to, I don't know, there's a part of me that just wants everyone to feel that sense of connection that I do. And obviously comes from a strong bias, but does that answer your question?
It does. And I've got one more based off of, I'm curious if you found in your research or studies or anything that found like people who have been in touch with this or cultivating it from throughout their life or from a young age, even though we don't have the language for it, but like we're cultivating it, if they gravitated towards the field of being a therapist?
I don't know. I don't know that. I would assume so, but I don't know that from research or anything that I read, but I would imagine that there would be a gravitation toward anything in the creative realm, or I would hope for those people. Yeah, but I think it so depends on the conditioning that we have and what we internalize from our parents, from our family, from our culture, from school, what we're taught is right or wrong, and how we get love. And it's so complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gwen, and great work. And it's really exciting. I love that I just want to like piggyback off of everyone's comments. Like, I love that this is your focus. When I read that this was the topic, I was like, of course, and so excited. And you did such a great job. And yeah, I would love to have the recording as well to refer to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Gwen, I have a comment if we have more time. So
just to let you know, Gwen, this is the last presentation for the morning, so you have time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so amazing job, incredible. One thing I was really appreciating is this idea of clinical intuition. It has this esoteric nature to it. And the way that you're weaving it into the neurobiology, the neuroception that's happening in a session is brilliant. And it's something so subconscious that we're unaware of that's happening. But for maybe people that are not necessarily non-believers or more biased to the science realm, this has extremely incredible clinical implications to be able to see how it's shifting our own physiology and potentially our, and obviously our clients as well. And I love that you're weaving this in a way that's creating more access points for different kinds of people and how they think and feel in the world. And for me as a manual therapist, I really appreciated that because I like knowing what's happening in the physiology. And so I now have a different perspective and lens to work with my clients. So thank you.
Of course. Yay. I'm glad it impacted you that way. That's cool
Yeah.
that it transfers over for you too. That makes so much sense.
Access points. It's really brilliant.
Thanks, Z.
Guinevere, one more thing I just want to say. I really like the distinction between the intuition and when you're reacting from a triggered place. Like that was really helpful to me because sometimes those can get a little crossed for me in my process. The other thing I really appreciate about your presentation is that you're bringing forward a topic that's so needed in our times. And then, I just kind of wish everyone moved in the direction of the intuition. So it's like you're pushing the field in that direction through this and also integrating your own roots, process coaching and everything that you've cultivated before with your psychotherapy practice. And that feels like just hugely important. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. That's totally right on. Yeah.
Lenny?
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say how proud I am of you, and like I'm gonna cry. I'm just so grateful that I have you as my sister, and just your like constant like openness for intuition and like encouraging me with that and encouraging my kids and my whole family, and I'll take all of it to heart. So thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. I love you. Love you, Laura.
My
sweet girl.
I'll just piggyback on Big Sister. I got teary-eyed Khalifa speak, and I am so proud. Yeah, I just feel so, I've loved watching your process of going through Naropa, and I don't know, can people hear me? My internet's maybe not working so well. You can? Okay. Just seeing you go through the process of going through Naropa and seeing how you found your people and your particular type of nerd that you are. We're all a nerd of something, and it's been so beautiful to see you find what you're passionate about in that environment. And I know it's been hard finishing up online, and just to say that you've done your very best, and I'm really proud of you, and it's beautiful to see what you're offering here. So I love you, Gwenny.
Love you. Thank you. We have both the nibblings on camera. Hi, Zeva. Hi, Thora. Well, thank you all for coming. This has been so sweet. I don't know if there's any last words.
I feel like all capstones in dissertation should be like this. Even when we move back to in person, just like have us all like pouring on the love and like crying and like yeah. So.
It's the Naropa vibe for sure.
I just want to say a little thing, Gwen, that thank you so much for, I studied before in another university, very traditional, and I always felt these things were wrong or not useful. And I just appreciate, I cannot believe that one of my classmates is presenting this topic so well, so beautiful done and so professional. And I just feel validated I'm glad that I follow my intuition to come to Naropa, and just seeing the faces of your family, of your sister. I was like watching all the faces while you presented, just touched me so much and speaks so much where you're coming from. And thank you for expressing your essence through this presentation. And I love you and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Rosario.
I want to chime on that. I really appreciate you sharing that sense of validation. Gwen, I really think that it was a beautiful presentation and really coherent to listen to. I think back to my father, who's a medical doctor, and I think of our intuition, whether greater or stronger, or how well practiced we are, or how open we are to listening to that inner voice. This is something that's just a human quality that we each carry with us. And I think that naming this and putting it in the context of kind of the clinical psychology is powerful, but also applicable to all realms, for in the political realm, in the medical realm, in the child rearing, child care, education realm, how we are tapping into the fullness of our humanness, to get out of just the direct mind cognition, as you put it, and listen to that bottom-up processes. I think it applies much more beyond the seeing clients, and how this information can be applied to kind of the greater human knowing and the qualities that we value in each other. So thank you for your work in this.
Thank you, Stem. Hi, Zeba. Well, lovely humans.
Well, Gwen, I just want to say how much I appreciate you having put together something that explains what I've done for 30 years. It's really exciting that you could put it into words in such a coherent and professional manner. You really nailed it. All of these presentations this morning have been fabulous. I need to have copies of them, but I just love them. So absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Oh, it's okay, Mama and Daddy. I know you guys are here loving me. Thank you. Well, thank you all.